These Violent Delights, Chapter 21. Her expression forcefully neutral, Kathleen slipped into the early morning communist meeting, putting one foot in front of the other and walking right past the people guarding the door. This was something she was very good at, seeing without being seen. Kathleen could strike a balance between confidence and timidity like it was a natural reflex. She had learned to pick up the bits and pieces that others built themselves upon, pulling her attributes and molding them into an acknowledgement of her own. She had adopted the way Juliet tilted her chin up when she talked, demanded respect even at her worst. She had learned to imitate the way Rosalind sank her shoulders down when her father engaged in endless rants, becoming small by intent so he would remember that she was demure and stop, even if there was an imperceptible smirk playing on her lips. Sometimes it was hard for Kathleen to remember that she was still her own person, not just shreds of a mirror, reflecting back thousands different personalities, most fitting for the situation. "Excuse me," Kathleen said absently, extending her hand to push past two communists chatting intently. They gave way without much notice, allowing Kathleen to keep moving through the crowded space. She didn't know what she was heading toward. She only knew she had to keep moving until this meeting started, or else she would look out of place. The meeting was being held at a large hall space, the ceiling hollow and tall, curving up to meet the steepness of the roofing. In another country, perhaps this might have been a church, with its stained glass windows and thick wooden beams. Here it was merely used for weddings involving foreigners and events that the rich put on. Ironic that the communists were renting it out now. "Get in, get out," Kathleen muttered to herself, echoing Juliet's words from earlier that morning. When Juliet came to her and Rosalind for help, she had been bustling with frantic energy, half an arm already jammed into her coat. "There has to be a reason, right?" Juliet had asked. "The communists wouldn't be muttering about the one genius in a party dreaming it all up if they didn't have some sort of proof. If Zangutai is innocent, then the proof should say so too, and point us in another direction. So we need to get to the proof." Rosalind was already needed elsewhere, at the club for an important meeting that Lord Kai would be taking with foreigners who required impressing, who needed to see Shanghai in its most extravagant glittering glory. By the pinched look in Rosalind's face, she likely had not been eager to be sent off in the communists anyway. Kathleen, on the other hand, didn't quite mind. Try as she might to despise this climate, there was something, too, to be enjoyed while neck-deep in the chaos and activity and broiling growing intentions. It made her feel like she was part of something, even if she was just the little flea latched onto a sprinting cheetah racing for prey. If she understood politics, then she understood society, and if she understood society, then she would be well equipped to survive it, to manipulate the playing field around her until she could have a chance of living her life in peace. As much as she loved her sister, Kathleen didn't want to survive the way Rosalind was surviving, among the lights and jazz music. She did not wish to get into a costume and powder her face until she was as pale as a sheet of paper like Rosalind did every day, with a sneer on her lips. Juliet didn't know how lucky she was to have born into her natural skin, into her white cheeks and porcelain-smooth wrists. There was so much luck to be had in the genetic lottery. One different code, and it was a whole lifetime of forced adaptation. All Kathleen could do to survive was forge her own path. There was no alternative. "I'm a first-year university student," Kathleen muttered under her breath, rehearsing her answer should anyone ask who she was. "Working as a reporter for the campus paper. I'm hoping to learn more about the exciting opportunities for workers in Shanghai. I was raised in poverty. My mother is dead. My father is dead to me. Oof." Kathleen froze. The person she had run into made a small bow of apology. "Please forgive me. I wasn't watching where I was going." Marshal Seho's smile was bright and forceful, even while Kathleen stared and stared. Did he not recognize her? Why was he here? Probably for the same reason you are. "Nothing to forgive," Kathleen replied quickly, inclining her head. She turned to go, but Marshall sidestepped faster than she could blink, placing herself right in her path. She nearly prevented herself from slamming her nose right into his chest. "In such a hurry?" Marshall asked. "The meeting won't start for another few minutes." He definitely recognized her. "I wish to find a seat," Kathleen replied. Her heart started to thud in her chest. The acoustics in the room were deceiving. Better to be as close to the stage as possible. It didn't matter that neither of them were wearing gang colors, attending a meeting run by a group that rejected them both. They were on opposite sides. A clash was a clash. "Oh, but stay a while, darling," Marshall insisted. "Look over there." Marshall put his hand on her elbow. Kathleen's hand immediately snapped to her waist, her fingers curling around the handgun sitting underneath her jacket. The air stilled. "Don't do that," Marshall whispered it almost sadly. "You know better." A clash was a clash, so why wasn't he chasing her out? This was White Flower territory. It would be poor decision-making on her part to shoot at him, but he could shoot at her. He could kill her, and the Scarlets could do nothing about it. Slowly, Kathleen eased her fingers away from the gun. "You don't even know what I was going to do." Marshall grinned. The expression came in a flash. Serious one second, then overjoyed the next. "Don't I?" She didn't know how to respond to that. She didn't know how to respond to this conversation at all, how to respond in a sort of flirtation that seemed to be more a personality trait rather than something performed with a goal in mind. How to respond to a simple little fact that he was not pointing his gun at her. A trick. The White Flowers knew how to play the long game. Marshall remained standing there. His gaze moved about her forehead and her nose and the pendant at her throat, and though Kathleen instinctively wanted to flinch away from scrutiny, she copied the slouch of his relaxed shoulders instead, almost challenging him to say something more. He didn't. Marshall smiled, like he was simply having fun with their staring contest. "Well, this has been a nice chat." Kathleen took a step back. "But I want to find my seat now. Goodbye." She hurried away with a huff, dropping into the first free chair she found near the front. She hadn't even wanted to sit down. She was trying to speak with the communists. Why was she so bad at staying on task? Kathleen looked around. To her left, an old woman was snoring away. To her right, two young university students, real ones unlike her if their notepads were any indication, were intently focused on discussing their plans for after this meeting. Kathleen craned her neck, then craned some more, her fingers tapping the back of her chair frantically. A ticking clock appeared in her mind's eye each time she blinked, as if her time here was a measurable thing that would soon run out. Kathleen's gaze snagged on a group of 3 balding men, 2 rows behind. When she strained her ears in focus, she noticed that they were speaking in Shanghainese, gibbering on about the state of the northern expedition, fingers stabbing down on knees, and tongues moving fast enough to spray spittle in all directions. The way they gestured made her think they weren't just casual attendees. Party members. Perfect. Kathleen made her way over, dragging her chair until she could plop down next to them. "Do you have a second?" she cut in, pulling their conversation to a halt. "I'm from the university." Kathleen produced a recording device from her pocket and held out in front of her. The thing was actually broken, dug out from, strangely enough, a pile of unused bullets from the armory in the Kai mansion. "We always have time for our students," one of the men replied. He puffed his chest out, readying himself. "I'm recording your voice, not taking a picture," Kathleen thought. "I'd like to publish a piece on the party's secretary-general," she said aloud. "Zhang Gutai?" Her eyes flicked to the stage. There were people gathering on the platform now, but they were speaking amongst themselves, shuffling around their notes. She had a few minutes before the place went quiet. She couldn't race these men into her questions. She needed to extract the information she wanted as quickly as possible, prime them into what she wanted. "What about him?" Kathleen cleared her throat. "The revolution needs a leader. Do you think his capable nature will be an asset?" Silence. For a moment she was afraid that she had started far too strong, stepped her bare foot into a nest of vipers, and scared them back into their holes. Then the man started to guffaw. "His capable nature?" one parroted with a wheeze. "Don't make me laugh." Kathleen blinked. She had hoped her leading questions would prompt them into thinking she knew more than she actually did. It seemed a fair guess that Zhang Gutai would be capable, did it not? There were very few other personality traits fitting for a mastermind who had schemed up an epidemic. Instead, her stab in the dark had landed in the other direction. "You do not think Mr. Zhang to be capable?" she asked, perplexity soaking into her voice. "Why would you think him to be?" one of the 3 men shot back, returning the genuine bemusement. Up on the stage, a speaker tapped the microphone. Sharp feedback ran through the whole building space, bouncing through the little nooks in the ceiling alcoves. "It is a fair assumption." "Is it?" Kathleen felt a tick begin in her jaw. She could not keep playing a game. She was untrained in the art of speaking untruths. Rumor has it that he has created a madness sweeping through Shanghai. The three men stiffened. Meanwhile, the first speaker on stage started to welcome the attendees, thanking them for coming and prompting those to the back to come closer to the front. "What sort of piece are you writing anyway?" The whisper floated over to Kathleen from the man seated farthest from her. He spoke in a way that moved only half his mouth, the words pushed out through the gaps of his teeth and the slit of his lips. Kathleen's hands were heavy with the recording device. Carefully she scrunched it in her fists and put it away, determining it had served her purpose. "A study of power," she replied, "and the madness that comes with it. A study of the powerful and those who are scared of him." Allowing no mistake over the meaning of her words, Kathleen whispered, "The uncovering of the madness." Applause rang through the hall. From somewhere afar, Kathleen thought she heard a brief whine of sirens merging into the noise. But when the applause stopped, all she could hear was the next speaker, a real Bolshevik who had come all the way from Moscow, hailing the benefits of unionizing. "Make no mistake," the man nearest to her met her eyes briefly before he leveled his gaze on the stage man again. Had he not beheld this information, Kathleen would never have thought him a communist. What was it that made this man different from the others on the street? At what point did mere political self-interest cross into fantasticism enough to die for a cause? If you wish to uncover Zhang Gutai's role in this madness, it is not his power that elevates him. "Then what does?" Kathleen asked. None of the men jumped to answer her. Perhaps the Bolshevik's speech on stage was far too captivating. Perhaps they were simply scared. "You claim to be heralds of equality." Kathleen tapped her foot in a discarded flyer lying upon the ground. The big, bold text was bleeding ink, soaked with droplets of someone's spilled tea. "Live up to your claim. Allow me to expose Zhang Gutai for the false scoundrel he is. No one needs to know that the information came from you. I don't even need to know your names. You were anonymous soldiers for justice." A beat passed. These men were itching to tell her. She could see it in the glint of their eyes, the frenzy of the high that came when one thought they were doing good in the world. The Bolshevik on stage took a bow. The hall erupted in a wave of applause. Kathleen waited. "You want to write a study on his power?" The man closest to her leaned in. "Understand this. Zhang Gutai is not powerful. He has a monster doing his bidding." A cold draft wafted into the room. With the applause dying, the audience grew quiet once more. "What?" "We saw it," the second one said firmly. "We saw it leave his apartment. He sends it out like a leashed demon to kill those who upset him." "The whole party knows," the third man added. "But no one speaks against dishonor while the tide rushes forward in our preferred direction. Who would dare?" Under the technicolor shadows of the stained windows, the whole audience seemed to shift forward, awaiting the next speaker while the stage remained empty. Kathleen might have been the only one turned in another direction. These men think sightings of the monster cause madness, she realized. They thought the monster to be an assassin on Zhang Gutai's instruction, killing those who looked upon it. But then how did the insects play into the equation? Why had Juliet been muttering on about lice-like creatures spreading madness instead? "That sounds like power to me," Kathleen remarked. "Power is something achievable by few." A shrug. "Anyone can be the master to a monster should their heart be wicked enough." The room suddenly roared with havoc, jostling chairs and screeching sounds echoing into the sonorous space. Suddenly Kathleen remembered hearing the faraway sirens and brushing them off. But indeed, they had been sirens, bringing them with enforcements that did not enforce law at all, only the way that things were. This was White Flower territory. They paid the guard municipal here a mighty amount to keep the gangsters in power, which included storming the meetings of communists, storming every attempt this party made in their progress toward igniting revolution and eradicating gangster rule. "Halt immediately and put your hands up," one of the officers boomed. The activity only erupted further as people streamed out the doors and dove under tables. Dimly, Kathleen considered doing the same, but an officer was already marching right for her, his expression set in harassment. "Venez avec moi," the officer demanded. "Ne bougez pas." Kathleen made a contemplative noise. Non, monsieur. J'ai un rendezvous avec Quenon. The officer jumped in surprise. He hadn't expected the Parisian accent. He himself did not have the features of the white French commonly seen in the concession. Like so many other officers in the Garde Municipale, he was only a product of French rule, shipped up for his labor from Annam or any of the other various countries south of China that had not managed to keep the foreigners out of its government. Mon nom, s'il vous plaît, the officer snapped, his hackles visibly rising with Kathleen's insolence. All around them, communists were being pushed to the ground and rounded up. Those who had not run off fast enough would be processed and placed on a list. Names to watch should the party grow any bigger and need culling. Leave her be. Kathleen whipped around, her frown heavy. Marshall was waving the officer off, waving a hand adorned with a ring that quite clearly belonged within the collection of Montagov heirlooms. The ring glinted in the light, and the officer's irate expression dulled. He cleared his throat and left the hassle to the nearest victim. "Why did you do that?" Kathleen asked. "Why do you offer your help when it has not been requested?" Marshall shrugged. From out of nowhere, he seemed to have conjured a glistening red apple. "They step on us enough. I wish to aid." He took a bite out of his apple. Kathleen tugged at her jacket. If she pulled any harder, the fabric would permanently have a wrinkle in it. "What is that supposed to mean?" she asked coldly. "The Garde Municipale is on your side. They will never step on you." "Oh, of course they do," Marshall smiled. But this time it did not reach his eyes. "They all do. They cannot wait to polish their shoes and stomp down with finality. People like us are dying every day." Kathleen did not move. Marshall took no notice of her discomfort. He went on, gesturing around with his apple. "Just as those communists you were speaking to would find the first opportunity to drag down their Secretary General." Kathleen made a noise of offense. "Were you eavesdropping on my conversation?" "And if I was?" The arrest seemed to be slowing now. There was a straight path from here to the door, and then Kathleen would have freedom, escaping with her newly acquired information bundled to her chest. Too bad the white flowers had the exact same information now. "Mind your business," Kathleen snapped. Before Marshal Seho could steal anything more, she marched away.